So, good morning to all the children that are out there, hopefully watching with their parents. This morning we're going to be reading a wonderful story about a mother who is probably one of the greatest examples of mothers that we have in the Word. But before we get to the story, I wanted to tell you something kind of interesting about names in the Lord's Word. So all of us have names, like my name is Alan, and we have Tony, and there is Bob up in the audio video booth. But we all have these names, and sometimes we don't think about what names really mean. But in the Lord's Word, every name means something really important. And I'll give you a hint. Sometimes, there are a lot of names in the Bible that either begin or end with the same two letters, which is L, E-L. And what that might mean? Well, the word El in Hebrew means God. So in our story, we're actually going to read about the father who was named Elkanah, and that begins with El and ends with something else. And then he has the son with Hannah, whose name is Samuel. So you have El at the end. So all these names kind of have that word God in them. So what might these names mean? If it's Elkanah or Samuel, we might wonder, what are those other parts? So with Elkanah, we might find out that his name means that God has created, that God is the creator. Isn't that a wonderful name? And that Samuel was named because Hannah was praying to the Lord to have a child. And she was so happy when the Lord answered her. It says that she named him Samuel because God had answered her. So it means, or the asked one of God, one who has heard, the God that has heard me. So let's go ahead and read our story today, which is from the first book of Samuel in the very first chapter. Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim, Zophim, sorry, that's a difficult name to pronounce there, of the mountains of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jehoram, and the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephraimite. So hear all those names. Well, the Lord put those names in there for a reason. There's probably a lot of stuff we can learn from those names. So Elkanah had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. Now Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. This man went up from the city yearly to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. Also, the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were the priests of the Lord that were there. And whenever the time came for Elkanah to make an offering, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all of her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah, although the Lord had closed her womb. So Hannah at this point wasn't able to have children, so it says that the Lord closed her womb. So continuing on. And then Elkanah, her husband, said to Hannah, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why are you not eating at the feast? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord. I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head." Continuing in verse 19. They then rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew his wife, and the Lord remembered her. So it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, "Because I have asked for him from the Lord." Now, When she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bulls, 1 ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. The child was young. Then they slaughtered a bull and brought the child to Eli. And she said, "O my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who stood by you here praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition which I have asked of him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to the Lord." So they worshipped the Lord there. It's a beautiful story about this woman, Hannah, who truly wanted to have a baby. Now, I want you to think about something that you might really want and would pray to the Lord for. Maybe it's to eventually have children of your own. Maybe it's whatever thing that you might want. But I want you to think about this story. And so Hannah had prayed and prayed to have this child. And only when he was a few years old, gave him back to the Lord. Can you imagine if you pray for something that you would want, you would think you would want to hold on to it and have it be yours. But it says that Hannah promised the child to the Lord for all the days of his life. So what might this teach us about not only what our mothers are there to do, but also what we do with the gifts that the Lord gives to us? Well, if we think about what a mom and a dad are supposed to be doing, is actually we're not just here to raise up children for this life in this world, to learn how to do things here, but the responsibility of parents is also to teach children about spiritual life, about heaven, and how to live in harmony and love with other people. Now, so we actually have in our baptism service a statement that parents basically are supposed to know that their child, even though they get to feel like it's their own, that the child is also supposed to be the Lord. This statement in our baptism service says that it is in the Lord's divine providence that this child was born and that she or he is committed into the care of the parents, so that by life in the world, he or she may be prepared for life in heaven. So this is a whole idea of giving our children back to the Lord, so teaching all the things in the Lord's Word, all the ways about heaven, so that in this life our parents are here to actually not just teach us about living here, but living in heaven. So that's something really important about what our mothers are here to do for us. And that even means that sometimes when we're thinking bad things or we say naughty things, that our parents really should say, that's not the way we should act. Or maybe say, it would be a more heavenly way to act if you did something nicer as opposed to what you might have done. Now, let's turn then again to this idea of what about the gifts that the Lord gives to us? No matter what those gifts are, we have to think about how everything is actually the Lord's. So maybe you're thinking about the gift of your intelligence. Now, we could use that just for our own selfish gains. We could use our intelligence to create a business, to make lots of money and have all of this stuff. But is that really doing it for the Lord? Maybe we should be thinking about how can we use the gift of our intelligence to give it back to the Lord, to love the Lord and his people. Maybe you're really strong. You might think of that gift of being really, really strong. Well, a person who receives this gift can do something bad with it. Maybe if you're really strong, you could hurt others. You could do that. But to give it back to the Lord is to use our strength for something really good and kind. So we need to think about all of the gifts that God gives us. How can we return them back to the Lord? And so we can think of this final statement that Hannah made, saying that, "For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to the Lord." So they worship the Lord there. Amen. The Lord give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. Amen.